Welcome back to another episode of Flawless Playing Garage, where today we're going to talk about how I accidentally bought a Type R and it almost killed me. So this is a 2000 Acura Integra Type R, known as the DC2 Type R to the cognoscenti, and it was in the middle of COVID on a blustery day, perhaps much like this one here today. When I was working one afternoon and happened to be browsing a car auction site, it was actually Cars and Bids, and I saw a couple different auctions that caught my eye. One in particular was actually a diesel Mercedes wagon. That was the real reason I was looking around, but a DC2 Type R caught my eye. And I texted a buddy of mine and said, man, I'm gonna kick myself when this auction ends later today, and I didn't even bid on it, when all you'd really have to do is sit on this thing for a few years and make boatloads of money. And he said, yeah, we kind of laughed, ha ha ha. And then the auction was progressing, and I kind of thought, well, I gotta just throw a bid in. I hadn't been tracking the market real closely, but I thought I knew roughly how much it would go for. And so I threw a couple of bids in that were significantly below what I was pretty confident the sale price would be. I got outbid immediately. That was fine. Basically walked away, then thought, well, I mean, I'll feel stupid if I don't just, throw one more bid in there. And so I did. And to my absolute shock, I won. It turns out also that I basically set the market for cars roughly in this condition at the time that I bought it in like the fall of 2020. So obviously I bought it, and the car was in California and I'm in Nebraska. And I had a big plan all put together for how I was gonna go get it around Labor Day or so of 2020. And I was getting the old daily driver Escalade with then 225,000 miles on it, ready for that trip. I had the car trailer ready to go, I was getting the Escalade ready, and I thought I really better change the transmission fluid. And it was in the process of doing that I ran over myself with the Escalade. If you want to hear that harrowing story, you can click somewhere, I'll put a link to it. But after God mercifully saved my life and I survived that encounter, I had to contact the seller, and it would have been pretty easy at that point, also facing medical bills that were more than what I paid for the car, to have used that as an excuse to back out. But that's not how I operate. Abraham Lincoln once said, when you make a bad bargain, hug it all the tighter. And as the Bible says, let your yes be yes and your no be no. I'd made a commitment and I decided I was going to follow through on that. So I did. I went ahead, continued the process of buying the car. Now I had to have the car shipped to me. There was no way I could handle a cross-country road trip at that point physically, and that was expensive. Intercity did a good job. I was really happy with it. I wanted enclosed transport that was reliable, and got it, but I paid handsomely for it. Got it unloaded here in Lincoln, checked it out a little bit, and then many months went by before I was physically able to drive anything like this that sits down low, needed to be able to shift with my right arm that had been damaged in the accident, and some other thing. But by that point, I did have the car, had it home, and was able to let it sit until I could give it the attention it needed. So let's go into some of what I had to do to kind of rehab this. I called it it was the Type R rehab. A little cosmetic freshening, quite a bit of kind of mechanical going through and freshening up, a lot of deferred maintenance, resetting a few bits that had been modified back to OEM, and then just enjoying the car a little bit. Now I knew it had been 5 or 6 years since the timing belt had been changed, so let's start by refreshing that. Yeah. So it might be time for valve cover gasket based on how much came pouring out, and I pulled the plug leads out. Yeah. Okay, well, glad I'm doing this for a couple reasons. One of which might be a little hard to see on camera here, but you can see the green crusties there. There are actually some trails running down, so that water pump has been seeping just a little bit. So it's definitely time to change that, along with the timing belt, plus the tensioner pulley, the timing belt, which goes right in the middle there. The tensioner pulley was not completely tightened down. That bolt was like finger tight. So, no evidence that the timing belt had slipped or anything really. I don't think that was an issue. But couldn't have been long for this world. Okay, oil pan is off. I'm going to go ahead and replace the seal, even though I really have no evidence of it leaking, but if I'm in this deep, might as well do the crank seal. Then just kind of a general inspection in here in the oil pan. The oil pan was definitely leaking a bit. Had some mess down here. Overall, things look pretty nice in there. A little bit of coloring on the pan, but really still quite nice. Inside the pan, everything looks pretty good in here too. Some dirty oil, but no sludge, no shiny speckles in the oil. Everything looking good that way. And of course, it's not unusual to find more things broken than you expected. In this case, needed some engine mounts too. Also really needed an oil pan gasket replacement. And I just cannot recommend Honda Bond enough. It's worth the extra $4 or $5 that it costs to get a tube of that from the dealer versus Permatex Ultra Gray. Nothing against Ultra Gray, but Honda Bond is legit. Okay, my personal favorite method for checking for TDC is a wooden dowel in the spark plug hole, just because there's almost no chance of scratching anything that way. And it makes it easy from a distance while you're turning the motor over by hand to watch the end of the dowel and know when you've gotten to TDC or when you've knocked a screwdriver onto the floor. And then on the B18 here, dropping a couple of Allen keys. It's set up for like a 5mm punch to go down into some holes that are in the cam to make sure you've got it aligned. Oops, right in there. Kind of see it. And if you don't have an exact 5mm punch handy, 5mm Allen key or thereabouts makes a good substitute. So we've got these both in the up position. We're going to get the water pump replaced and then start fishing the new timing belt on. And with the new timing belt, water pump, a few seals, the new engine mounts, oil pan gasket, things come back together and it starts to look like an engine again. And with that new valve cover gasket, I tell you what, these spark plugs are so easy they practically install themselves. The old fluid actually came out beautifully. It looked practically new, but you never know when it was changed last, so in goes some more. Pro tip, always remove the fill plug before removing the drain plug. I even actually remember to do it that way this time. And it never hurts to throw in a new OEM fuel filter if you don't know when that was changed last. I had a small crack in my distributor cap, so a new OEM cap went on, and then the rarest of all Honda B-Series accessories, the factory air filter and box. Honestly, either of cars I drove or friends that had these back in the day, I have never seen an actual B-Series factory intake until this car. And that is how you take a car that ran perfectly fine and spend hundreds of dollars and many hours fixing it so that it still runs perfectly fine. But, with a lot more confidence that it should be good to go for many revs and many years in the future. Okay, once more through the gears, just because we're friends.